Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the informational meeting for the 2022 revaluation project for the town of Arundecoit. My name is Amy Yorsta. I'm the current assessor for the town of Arundecoit. Right now it's 6:30 p.m. on November 30th, 2021. We are currently broadcasting live via Facebook Live and on our iCat channel 1303. I would like to introduce our presenter for the evening, Joe Eminger. Joe is the president of Eminger, Newton, Pigeon, and Magyar, or EMPM for short. The town contracted with EMPM to assist us with the revaluation project. Joe is going to give a presentation, and at the end, there will be a question and answer period. We will be monitoring the Facebook chat, so feel free to put questions in there during the presentation. We will also answer questions that were collected in advance of this evening. And now I'm going to hand it off to Joe.
Thank you, Amy. I am going to share my screen here, and hopefully everybody can see that. We'll get moving on with our presentation. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy schedule today to listen what we have going on with the reassessment project. To start out, and again, you'll have to excuse me while I figure out how to move the screens here, and that's not the right project, of course. Let me get the right project up here. We had this all worked out before. Can everybody see that screen there, Amy? Okay.
Yes, we can see it, Joe, and you're on the right project.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. So this is a 2022 reassessment project. As Amy just said, I'm the reassessment contractor, and we're going to go through the presentation tonight. Unfortunately, it might have a few hiccups here, so just be patient with us. So the goal of any project, okay, any reassessment project is to get assessment uniformity, okay, to recreate fair and equitable assessments. You're going to hear me use that term throughout the presentation tonight. Fair and equitable assessments on all property types, okay? A misnomer and what you want to follow along with, a reassessment does not raise the tax levy. Okay, there have been a lot of questions that I've taken over the phone and in emails in every town that I get, and people believe that by going through a reassessment, that's going to raise your taxes. And I'm not going to lie to you, some people's taxes will go up because of this reassessment project, but I can also assure you that some people's assessments are going to be going down because of the reassessment project as well. And that's mainly because we're relooking at all the properties in the town, and we're going to be analyzing the sales, and some of the properties may have been overassessed before, and we're going to get them more in line with everybody. So the reassessment provides an equitable distribution of the property tax. And now we're going to get into how we're going to do that. Okay. The property tax is administered locally. Okay. All revenues go to support the local services. Local municipalities, your towns and villages, they are really charged with providing the services. Your county government has another function, your state government has another function, your federal government has another function. But your local government, the town of Arundecoit, they are charged with providing services. And then your property tax is based on the value of your real property. In New York State, it's based on what they call ad valorem tax. That's at value. That's the law. The town board is state law. The town board can't change that. The assessor certainly can't change that. Ad valorem tax is the law in New York State. And then it's the only form of taxation that provides a taxpayer with the opportunity to dispute the base assessments. It's a broad tax that I'm not going to say all property owners pay, because there are tax exempt properties, and we're going to get into that a little later. But everybody who is taxable pays the tax. Here are two terms that I would like you to become familiar with, very familiar with, and they are, if you get anything out of this presentation tonight, I want you to understand the difference between the budget and the levy. They are two totally different terms, and one has a much bigger impact than the other on what you're going to be paying in tax. Okay. The taxing jurisdictions, schools, towns, and counties, they're responsible for adopting the budget. The budget is the big number. Okay, I call it the big number. It's a number at the top. It takes into account everything that is going to be needed to provide the services in your community. It's going to take into account the fees that are generated by the various departments. It's going to take into account some anticipated grants that are going to be coming into the town. And it takes into account the taxation that they're going to have to pass on to the residents and business owners in order to provide those services, your garbage pickup, your police service, et cetera. Okay, these revenues are subtracted from the budget, okay, to arrive at a tax levy. So you have the big number, and then you're going to take off the fees that are generated, the grants that are generated, and you're going to end up with a number that's going to be the number that has to be raised through taxation. That number that has to be raised through taxation is the tax levy. That's the number that you need to pay special attention to, not only this year and next year, every year going forward. That's a number that you should pay attention when your town board passes their budget, when your school board passes their budget, when the county legislature passes their budget, because the tax levy is a good indicator of what is going to be happening with your taxes. The tax levy is what is impacted by the 2% tax cap that the county has, okay, that the state has, I'm sorry. In 2011, the New York State Legislature enacted a law that has to deal with the New York State property tax cap, better known as that, which is the lesser of 2% or the cost of CPI index, the rate of inflation. Okay, for most years, it's been at below 2%, quite frankly, for the last 10 years. More recently, though, it's been 2%. And for 2022, it's also going to be 2% for 2022. We've all seen the increase at the gas pumps and other prices that have gone up, and that affects obviously the CPI or cost of inflation. So here are some additional factors that you also need to know about budget and taxes and the levy. Okay, how do you get the tax rate? Don't misconstrue that the tax rate is going to stay the same this year as it or next year, I'm sorry, as it was this year. Okay, the tax rate is determined by dividing the tax levy by the total taxable assessed value of the real property. Your assessments are determined by the assessor, and here's how the tax rate is arrived at. And then this is a good formula to keep in mind. It's the total tax levy divided by the total taxable assessed value, not the total assessed value, the total taxable assessed value. Okay, what's not included in total taxable assessed value is what we refer to as Roll Section 8, not-for-profits, your schools, your churches, your hospitals, and all the other not-for-profits. That's not included in that taxable assessed valuation number. You did that, and that's how you get the tax rate. This is a hypothetical example that I show here. I have $10 million being the tax levy. You take that in the total taxable assessed value of the town, and you'd come up with a $20 per thousand tax rate. Okay. The one thing I can guarantee you is that the tax rate will be going down next year in the town of Arundecoy. People have asked that question. Excuse me. Over the last month or so, I'm taking calls and emails. They're assuming that the assessment is going to go up, but the tax rate isn't going to go down. And no, that's not going to happen. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. Okay. Your assessment may be going up, but the tax rate is definitely going to be coming down. What it's going to come down to, we won't know that until the very end of the project. So going to have to wait until March, to figure that out. Okay. While I'm on the subject of taxes, I'm going to ask this question. I put your hands up, and you can do it in the quiet of your home or wherever you are. Okay, and you'll see me what I'm going to do. Okay, who thinks they pay too much in taxes? Raise your hand. I'm going to raise both my hands. Okay, because everybody thinks that they pay too much in taxes, but it's not a question of paying too much in tax. We live in the United States of America, in New York State, and our founding fathers and mothers, they came up with a system that it says that everybody, unless you're tax exempt, has to pay real estate tax. So you're going to pay taxes. The two things, right, that are only that you're sure of is you're going to die and you're going to pay taxes. Okay, and that's true. That's very true. Okay, so but you want to make sure, and that's what this project is trying to do, and we're going to get through other steps that you can do at the end of the project. This project is trying to make sure that you only pay your fair share of tax. So don't come to me in March and April when you get your new assessment next year and say, Joe, my taxes are just way too high. This is not a taxation project. This is a valuation project. Okay, if you have concerns about your taxes, you need to reach out to your town board members, your school board members, if it's a school tax, or your county legislature, if it's your county tax. They address the taxes because they are the ones who adopt the tax levy. The assessor does not address the tax levy. The assessor adopts values, and that is why this is a valuation project, not a taxation project. Okay, so remember that although assessments do play an integral part in the tax calculation, the tax levy is the controlling factor. That's why I said earlier, pay attention from tonight forward on tax levies and every year going forward on your school bill, your town bill, and your county legislature. Pay attention to that. Most of you, if not all of you, your assessed value really hasn't changed since 2018, but your tax bill has gone up. And why has your tax bill gone up if your assessment has stayed the same? It's gone up because the tax levy has gone up. Again, proving that the tax levy is the most important component of your of the formula here, and not your assessment. The assessment is only a one component of it. So what's the job of an assessor? The assessor's job, most people, 20 years ago would say the assessor's job is to put the value on my property, and they were right. But the job of an assessor has grown tremendously over the last 10, 15 years, and they have much, much more responsibility. Okay, yes, they provide fair assessments by determining the market value on your property. They do keep an inventory on all the properties that are accurate and current. They are really, in many instances, the face of the town. The assessor's office has people coming into their office daily, calling them up daily, asking questions. They really are an integral part of town government. They help the taxpayers understand assessments, exemptions. They process all the exemptions, such as the STAR, the senior citizens, the veterans. That is a large component of their job that 20, 30 years ago was a very small component. It's changed dramatically there. And they maintain all the changes related to the assessment role utilizing computer software. Okay, so fair assessments. How are assessments arrived at in the state of New York? New York State real property tax law says that all real property in each assessing unit in each municipality must be assessed at a uniform percentage of value. They do not say what percentage of value that is. They just said it has to be a uniform percentage. So it can be, there's municipalities downstate that have an equalization rate of less than 1%. And we're trying to stay at 100%. We will be at 100% of Irondequoit in 2022 when the project is done, because it's more transparent. It's easier to understand. So the assessor has to define value as market value, which is the most probable price in a competitive and open market between a willing and knowledgeable buyer and seller. Not all sales are market value sales. There are a lot of sales that aren't market value, Could be a distress sale, foreclosure sale, some estate sales. So, but market value, most probable sale price in a competitive market with a willing buyer and a willing seller. Okay. One of the nice things that's happened over the last 10, 15 years is New York State has enacted a law that says on your tax bill, it states the uniform percentage of the value, what the equalization rate is. And it tells you what that value is. It'll give you the equalization rate and it'll give you the equalized market value. So your tax bill has a lot of information on it already. Look closely on the tax bill. Okay. So when you get to 100%, and that's where we're going to be at the end of this project, when you get to 100% equalization rate, okay, you get your full star exemption. It's not based on the percentage. The veterans get their full exemption, okay? And most importantly, your assessed value is your market value. Assessment equity, okay? Equity with respect to assessments and real properties means, okay, properties are assessed at a uniform percentage of value. Again, the 100% figure. Properties with similar values pay similar taxes. That's what that's the goal here. You want to make sure that you're just paying your fair share. Equity, again, is the goal, number one goal. New York State requires that every municipality be assessed at a uniform percentage of value. As I said it earlier, doesn't tell you what that uniform percentage is. Right now, it's 88% in the town of Irondequoit. Okay, as time goes on, that number will in all likelihood keep going down further. And that's one of the reasons why the town board elected to do a reassessment project, because you want to maintain the best equity in a role, in an assessment role, you should try and stay at 100% value. These towns downstate that are 1% or 2%, okay, they haven't had assessment projects done in 60, 70 years or longer, okay? They have a lot of inequities in their role. And why is that? The main reason is the law favors you, the property owner. The property owner can come in, if you buy a home, and I know you're not seeing that too much in the market that we're in today, but if you bought a home that was $30,000, you paid $30,000 more than it was $30,000 less than it was assessed at. $30,000 less than it was assessed at. You can come into the assessor's office and present your sale contract, present the ML listing to show that it was exposed on an open market, and the assessor, in all likelihood, would lower your assessment to what the sale price was. Conversely, the assessor cannot raise your assessment based on that sale. If you paid $30,000 more for a property, the assessor cannot arbitrarily look at that sale that you paid $30,000 more than it's assessed for and raise your assessment $30,000. That's what is commonly referred to in the assessment community as the welcome stranger law. They can't do that. The only time an assessor really can raise an assessment, other than when improvements are made to a property, if you put on an addition or do specific improvements to a property, the only time an assessor can make changes is if they do a reassessment, townwide reassessment project. Okay, when assessment equity exists, the tax burden is distributed equally and fairly amongst all the taxpayers. And that's all we're looking for. We're just trying to be fair to everybody. Recognizing, of course, that we're not going to hit every assessment correct. Okay, I mean, when you're dealing with all the assessments that we're going to be dealing with in the town of Irondequoit, there's going to be some that we don't get correct, and we're going to address that process at the end of a little bit at the end of this presentation when we tell you what you can do in March and April of next year. So equity versus inequity. Okay, and you've seen this probably in your neighborhood. If one property or neighborhood is significantly underassessed, not only are they paying too little in taxes, but other property owners are subsidizing that taxpayers or neighborhoods share of the bill. Okay, so if and I got an example here, right here that's coming up, and you're going to see this of inequity and how one of these owners is subsidizing the other owner. Okay, so we have Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Jones. These are two center entrance colonials. Okay, they are not in Irondequoit, so don't go looking for them. Okay, the market value in 2018 for this property was $100,000 for Mrs. Smith. In 2020, that should be 2018 on the top there. In 2018, the Mrs. Jones assessment was $100,000, and the assessed values, their assessed market value, was $100,000. Now we're going to fast forward to 2022. Okay, 4 or 5 years later, Mrs. Smith home went from 100,000 to 300,000 for, could be for a variety of reasons. Okay, Mrs. Jones' property also increased, but it only increased to $150,000. So they were both assessed for $100,000 at full value in 2018. They went from 300,000 for Mrs. Smith in 2022, and Mrs. Jones went up to 150,000. The assessed value, though, for both of them is still $100,000. So what's happening here? You got a property worth 300,000 that's assessed for 100, and you got a property worth 150,000 that's assessed for 100. Okay, what's happening here is that Mrs. Jones is subsidizing Mrs. Smith's taxes. Okay, and this is happening in Irondequoit. It's happening in every property or every community in New York State throughout the country that doesn't keep their assessment rolls every 4 or 5 years at 100%. So that's the goal, is to get rid of this inequity in the roll. And this is happening throughout Irondequoit and other towns in Monroe County. So 3 things can happen when you're going with your new assessment that you're going to receive in next March. Okay, and here's some examples. Okay, the first example says your assessment could increase and your tax bill could decrease. Some people have a hard time understanding this. I can assure you that this will happen to some property owners in Irondequoit, where your assessment is going to increase and your tax bill is going to decrease. And here's why. I'm going to show you why. And again, these numbers are just hypothetical. They don't pertain to Irondequoit and in particular, but you'll get the example of how it can happen. So last year, the assessment on the property was $100,000. The total taxable value of the town was $50 million. The tax levy was $1,500,000. What's the tax levy again? Remember, the tax levy is the amount of money that needs to be raised through taxation to provide the services that your town government provides. And then you get a tax rate of $30 per thousand. How do you get the $30,000 per thousand? Okay, you take the tax levy of $1.5 million and you divide this, that $50 million we're doing on a per $1,000 of assessed valuation. So that $50 million divided by 1,000, you get $50,000. So you take $1.5 million divided by $50,000 and you come up with 30. So it's $30 per thousand. You take the 30 times the 100, because it's again per $1,000 of assessed valuation. So you take 30 times 100 and you get $3,000. I'm in a motion detector here. My lights will go off periodically, so you'll see me waving. I apologize for that. Okay, so this year, your assessment went up 5%. So your new assessment goes up to $105,000. The total taxable value of the town went up 8%. So your total taxable value went from $50 million to $54 million. The tax levy stayed the same. That means the town fathers and mothers, they did their job and they had level spending for the year. So the tax levy stayed the same. So you take the tax levy of $1.5 million into 54,000 divided by $54,000, and you get a tax rate rounded of $27.78 per $1,000. So you take 2778 times 105 and you get $2,917. A decrease in your tax bill of $83. Don't spend it all in one place, but it did go down even though your assessment went up 5%. The next example, your assessment could increase and your tax bill could stay the same. So it's the same numbers on the left. On the right, your assessment went up $5,000. Your total taxable to town went up 8% to 54 million. But here's the difference this time. The tax levy went up 2.86%. Okay, and that can happen. How say, Joe, how can that happen? Because the tax levy says it's 2% or the rate of the or lesser of the CPI. There's a special clause in there that you get the carryover. Municipalities and school districts get a carryover, and if they were under the prior year, they get the carryover some or all that in the following year. So in this example, it's a 2.86% increase. So the tax levy went up from $1.5 million to $1,542,855. And then you get the different tax rate now. Take $1,542,855 into 54 divided by $54,000. You get that tax rate of $2,857. You take that times the 105 and round it, it's the same $3,000. So your assessment went up and your taxes could stay the same or relatively close to the same. That's going to happen in Arundecoy, I guarantee you. The third example, I don't believe is going to happen. I can almost guarantee it's not going to happen, but I want to show an example here. This is what I refer to as Armageddon. Okay, the two worst things can happen. Your assessment could decrease and your tax bill could increase. Okay, your home, at least in my instance, my home is my largest asset. You want to, your home, you want your home to increase in value. You do not want your home to decrease in value. Okay, the example on the left stays the same. The example on the right, your assessment goes down 5%. So it was worth $100,000 last year. Now it's worth $95,000 this year. Okay, here's why this example isn't going to happen. The total taxable value to town went down 5%. Okay, in this environment that we're in today, the total taxable value of any or all municipalities in Western New York are not going down. But in this example, it went down 5%. So the total taxable value is now $47,500,000. The tax levy did go up that 2.86% that we used in the prior example. So the tax rate now is $1,542,855 divided by $47,500. You get a new tax rate of $32.48 per thousand. You take that times 95 and you get a rounded tax bill of $3,085.60, or roughly $85. Your tax bill went up. So those are the three things can happen. Don't assume your taxes are going to go up just because your assessment go up. And what I tell people, and I'll be getting more to this in February when we have another public presentation on what's going to happen in March. What I tell people is pay attention to the difference, the percentage difference of your assessment if it went up to the overall average of the town's assessment going up. If the taxable valuation of the town went up 25% and your assessment went up 15%, there's a very strong likelihood that your taxes will, even though your assessment's going up, your taxes will be staying the same or going slightly lower. We're going to get more into that at the end of February when we have our next presentation. Okay, so equalization rates. Equalization rates are when a municipality is not at 100%. Okay, they are confusing. Who sets the equalization rate? Your town assessor's office, the town board, my firm, we do not set the equalization rate. The equalization rate is set by the New York State Office of Real Property Services and Taxation, and they do a survey, what they refer to as a survey, in every town in New York State. They look at a representative sample of sales, and they determine based on those sales what the equalization rate is going to be for that municipality for the upcoming year. Okay, so like I said, this year it's 88% for Arundecoy, meaning that if you have a house assessed at $88,000, your full market value estimate is $100,000. After the project, Arundecoy will be at 100%. And the equalization rate, as I said, is set by the state of New York. You can fight, the town can challenge the equalization rate. Some towns do. Very few towns are successful in challenging it. I'm just being honest with you here. Okay. So we want to get that equalization rate up to 100%. So nothing takes place during the project by my firm or the assessor will change the total value to be raised, the tax levy. The assessor doesn't control the tax levy. My firm doesn't control the tax levy. Who controls it, hopefully you've heard me say it a few times, are your town boards, your school boards, and your county legislatures. The pie that is here, that's the tax levy. That represents the tax levy, that pie that you're seeing. The pie is going to stay roughly the same size. Okay, it can go up more than likely close to 2%, a little over, a little under, but it's going to stay in that 2% realm more often than not. No matter what they do to the assessments, the assessor, I can't lower assessments. It's the assessor is the one who signs off on the assessment. The assessor could lower everybody's assessment in the town of Arundecoy by 50%. And what would happen would be your taxes would be the same amount to the penny that they were last year. And why is that? Because the tax levy, that 50% reduction applied to everybody. Everybody was treated equally. And when everybody's treated equally and the tax levy is going to go up, or it's going to be the exact same number. The tax rate's going to change. What I just went through that explanation, the tax rate's going to change, but the size of the pie is staying the same. So your taxes are impacted by that. So pay attention to the tax levy, what's going on with the tax levy. How can we keep assessments fair and equitable? It's through doing reassessment projects. Is it required by law? No, it is not mandated from Albany that every community do reassessments. Most towns who do reassessments, and there are more and more doing it because it's really the best thing for the residents, because it keeps equity in the roll. As more towns are doing more and more reassessment projects, you're seeing that community involvement and community acceptance is getting better. Understanding when 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I started doing reassessment projects, the public really didn't understand reassessment projects that much, how they work. But as we've gone on over the last 15 years doing these projects, and we've done towns multiple times, we've done various towns, and people understand, and when they go through it once, they go, oh, okay, yeah, my assessment went up, but the tax rate did come down, just like Joe said it would, and my taxes, went up a little bit, but that's inflation going up. Your town government has to spend money on things just like you have household items. The price of gas is affecting your town government. They have vehicles that they have to, supply gas to. So everything that affects your personal budget, you got to realize is probably more often than not affecting the town budget as well. So they need to account for those things. So what is a reassessment project? It's a systematic review of all locally assessed parcels that they ensure they're at a uniform percentage of value as of the valuation date on the assessment roll. Okay, so that's Real Property Law 102. Why do we need reassess and why are they necessary? Well, one, the market is changing constantly. Right now, we're in a market that is going up. Okay, and you would think sooner or later the market's going to start to flatten off, maybe even come down in all likelihood. Over the last 40, 50 years, Western New York has seen usually gradually a steady increase in prices. Okay, maybe 2, 3, 4% a year. And now you're seeing a market that's there, you're seeing this increase in value, this spike. Okay, in 2008, when the rest of the country saw a real estate crunch, a real estate softening of the market, properties in Western New York did not see that big dip in value. Okay, they saw a little bit in value, but they didn't see that big dive in value. The next time the country goes through a housing market crisis, Western New York probably will see a bigger impact on the values. And at that time, most towns, I would think, who did a reassessment project would probably want to do a reassessment project again to reflect those changing property values. Okay, not all properties will change at the same value at the same rate. There are different parts of Irondequoit that have been increasing in value than other parts of Irondequoit. Okay, but that equalization rate gets applied to everybody. Okay, so that's not fair. Not fair to everybody. There are stronger markets in Irondequoit, and there are less stronger. I'm not going to call them weaker markets, but there are less stronger markets in other places in Irondequoit. But that equalization rate that the state applies gets applied to everybody. So it's not a perfect system, the equalization rate process, but it's the best that you can come up with unless you do a reassessment project. As value change, so does your share of the tax levy. Your share of the pie will change, and you only want to pay your fair share. So how is market value determined? Okay, my firm, the assessor, we do not create market value. Who creates market value? You create the market value. The buyers and sellers determine what the market value of homes are in your community. What we do, my firm does, and the assessor does, is monitor and analyze the real estate transactions to establish market value estimates. Okay, our firm uses only licensed appraisers to do this work. So we do our modeling, we do our review work. We have licensed residential and commercial appraisers in New York State doing this work. And there are several comparable sales on your residential homes, more than several. There's actually 4 or 5 sales that will be used to compare or match your property to. So what drives market value? Other than, we're talking about really supply and demand economics 101, okay? And that's why we're in the market. But the biggest factor 5,000 years ago in determining market value was location, location, location. And 5,000 years later, today, what drives your market value? It's still location, location, location. You've probably all heard that. It's still true. Okay, some locations are more desirable than other locations. Okay, the more desirable on a lakefront, lakeview property, you may live next to an industrial, plant. Obviously not as desirable as a lakefront property. Some people may want to have some more land, get a little larger lot. What else drives the market value? There are a number of factors. Okay, economic influences. Well, how's the economy doing? That's really outside you as a buyer and seller. How that does it, but it does impact market value. Home style, ranch style home versus 2-story, number of bedrooms, baths. The ranch style home is a very popular style home as we have an aging population. Okay, so those typically sell for a higher price per square foot. Other factors are the type and size of the land, interest rates. And some of you have brought this up in some of your correspondence to me already. And I was happy to see that because you understand that interest rates play a very important role in market value. Think back to the late 70s and early 80s under President Carter and President Reagan. Okay. And I'm coming back here. There we go. And President Reagan. And we had interest rates on your mortgages of 16, 18%. And now we're looking at interest rates today in 2021 of 3%. So what does that do? That brings more people can afford more house. more, okay, more pay for more. You're not paying 16, 18% in interest. You're paying 3%. So you can afford, you're bringing in more people, more buyers into the marketplace. And that definitely has an impact on interest rates, has an impact on value. As interest rates creep up, which they've been saying they're going to creep up now for a couple of years, but they haven't. As interest rates start to creep up, you'll see fewer and fewer people in the marketplace, and that'll have a softening in the real estate market when that happens. Right now, it's a seller's market. I mean, if you own a home free and clear, and you're not looking to you're just looking to maybe go into an apartment building, you're going to get a lot more than you paid for it, even if it was as recently as 4 or 5 years ago, and especially if you bought it 10, 15 years ago. See a big difference. Okay, availability of jobs, the economy, though, that plays a role. Commuting distance to where the jobs are plays a role, and just the overall condition and amenities of a property, the construction grade and condition. Changes in property values. One thing is also given that different types of properties in different locations change in value at a different pace. Okay, and that's kind of what I told you. You could have the different sections of the town appreciate at different rates. So the property values in different areas of the town are different, even though the homes may be fairly similar in size. And over a period of time, without a reassessment project, the equity may diminish. Again, we're just trying, the town fathers and mothers want to protect your equity in your property and are trying to make sure that nobody is underassessed. Okay, the loss of assessment and equity will result in some people paying more than their fair share. That's the example that we don't want. Okay, we want you to pay your fair share. Everybody has to pay taxes, but we want to make sure that you're only paying your fair share. There are people in Irondequoit right now who are underassessed, meaning that the other people in the town who are assessed correctly and they perhaps overassessed, they are subsidizing those people in the town who are underassessed. And that's one of the goals of the project. So the question you have to ask yourself is the market value estimate the assessor derived at for your property a reasonable representation of what you expect to receive on your property? So when you get your notice come March, and we're going to get into that in February, I'm going to explain that to you in February. You just got to ask, be realistic. You bought your property for, $100,000, 7 years ago, and the assessment's at, $115,000. That's probably a realistic expectation that the property is assessed at that number. You got to expect that there was an increase in value to your property. Okay, so here are some dates that you should be made aware of. Okay, we're doing the next public meeting that will be publicized is in February of 2022. That's not 2021, February 2022. The impact notices will be mailed out in March of 2022. The informal hearings will go out in March and April of 2022. When I say impact notices, that's going to be the notice that's going to tell you what your assessment is going up to. Okay, and we're going to explain that at the February meeting. Informal hearings, then that's going to be your opportunity to call up and meet with somebody, either virtually, depending on COVID protocols, either virtually or in person, and talk about, you're going to have a conversation with someone from my firm on the property. The notification of hearing results will occur. You'll get that's the tentative roll is on May 1st, 2022. So you're gonna come in, meet with my staff. If you're not satisfied with your assessment, we will reanalyze your property, and then another notice will be sent out, and you will have those results by May 1st. Tentative grievance roll is on, again, May 1st, the tentative roll. Grievance day is going to be on May 24th next year. That's when they'll start those hearings, and the final assessment roll is July of next year, 2022. So what can you do? Most of the information, the assessor's office is open to the public. This is an open book project. Okay, we want you to be made aware of everything that's going on. Check the information that is on your property, the square footage, things like that. Check the town's website. Like I said, you'll be able to make an appointment for an informal review hearing, and you'll be more than ample time to set up an appointment, and more than ample time to we'll listen to what you think is in the property. We are not going in on the inside of your home. Okay, we're doing everything from the right of way. So we need to, so you know your home better than we do. We're using multiple listing service to get information on sales. We're looking at all the arm's length sales that occurred in Arundecoy. So we're using multiple listing information. We're using all other accesses that we have in public databases to get information on your sale, but we're not getting in on the inside of your home. Unless you want us to go on the inside of your home. If you want us to go on the inside of your home, we'll be happy to set up a time where one of our appraisers can come out and go through the inside of your home. Okay, so we're using homes at arm's length sales that have occurred in the last 3 years. So we're not going back, 5, 6 years and valuing your property. We're doing it in the last 3. You want to make sure that the property inventory matches what we have to what you have on the square footage. When we talk about square footage, we're using what is called SFLA, square footage living area. Those are the outside dimensions of your home. They're not the inside, interior dimensions. So we count closets, we count stairways. It's the outside dimensions of your home. That's the square footage figure that we use. A lot of times, frequently, we'll get people calling us up and they'll say, Joe, the square footage that the town has is 150 square feet more than what I have. And I go through the figure. I say, well, how did you calculate your square footage? And they say, well, we took interior room measurements. And that's when I tell them, okay, that you would have less square footage because we use exterior dimensions. That's the standard practice, standard principle in measuring properties throughout the country. So what's the next step? We're going to get it more into this in February when we have our next hearing. But you have the Board of Assessment review process where you got to fill out a formal grievance form, RP 524. That's a more formal process, and that takes place after May 1st of 2022. And the hearings again will take place on May 24th of 2022. The informal review process that I talked about, that's exactly what I just said what it was, very informal. You call up and just set an appointment and we talk about your property. You should maybe bring interior pictures of your home, show us what the inside of your home looks like. Maybe it hasn't had any or updates or a lot of updates. You just want to tell a story about your home and what is actually there on the inside. You can go to, you'll get a decision by the Board of Assessment Review by July 1st, and then you can still challenge it one more way. You can go to what is called Small Claims Assessment Review, and that's a hearing before a hearing officer. Typically, an attorney is appointed by the court, and you come in and you represent your case. Typically, at this point, you probably should hire a reputable licensed residential appraiser if it's a residential home to look at to do an appraisal of your property. The town will come in and they will explain to the hearing officer why they think the assessment is accurate. So you can go to Small Claims Assessment Review. You'll get a decision on that, and whatever the Small Claims Assessment Review officer decides, that's going to be your assessment for the year. There's no other challenges that you can go after the Small Claims Assessment Review. So you have the informal review process, you have the more formal Board of Assessment review process, and you have the SCAR hearing. You have 3 bites at the apple, so to speak, to attempt to get your assessment lower if you're not satisfied with the initial assessment that's going to come out in March. Okay, if you have a commercial property, that has to go through an attorney, what is called an Article 7 proceeding. You can't do that on your own. It is a more costly approach than a residential property, because commercial property, you might have to pay an appraiser, $4, $5, $10, $15,000, depending on your property, just to do an appraisal. And you have the attorney cost as well. whether it's a residential property or a commercial property, the burden of proof is on you. Okay, the assessment figure that you're going to get in March is assumed to be correct. Okay, so it's incumbent upon you then to prove to either at the informal review, at the Board of Assessment review, or at the SCAR why you believe that the assessment is incorrect. And you do that by getting additional different sales, having an appraisal done. There's a couple ways that you can get into that, but you must present convincing evidence that the assessor's judgment was incorrect. Burden of proof is on you, whether it be residential property or a commercial property. Okay, again, the assessor's job is to have fair assessments. The assessor has no interest in the undervalue or overvalue of your property. Nothing changes in the assessor. There's nothing to be gained by the assessor. Okay, the objective is to produce equitable assessment roll for a fair distribution of the real estate tax property valuation. So there's some myths and facts here that I'm going to go through quickly. Okay, tax levies grow at a faster rate in municipalities that conduct reassessments. That's a fact. The budget or dollar-driven systems force the tax rate to float and require the budget to be set without regard to the underlying taxable value. This is the key to your tax rate. It's the tax levy. Has it increased, decreased, or stayed the same? That's going to determine, in all likelihood, what your taxes are going to be doing. In a reval year, the tax rate usually decreases, creating the illusion that the town has reduced taxes. The tax rate will decrease next year. Okay, well, when I say next year, it's going to be the first tax bill that your new assessment is going to be applied to will be your 2022-2023 school tax bill. The first town and county bill that the new assessment will be applied to will be the 2023 January town and county tax bill. So the tax rate is going to be going down. Some elected officials like to state that, that the taxes are going down because look at the tax rate, is going, I decreased the tax rate. Don't listen to that argument. Okay, the tax rate will be going down, but that doesn't mean your taxes are going down. Pay attention. I can't say it enough. Pay attention to the tax levy. That's going to tell you more than likely what's happening with your taxes. Okay. In a non-revalue, if the municipality needs more money, they will raise the levy, causing a higher tax rate. Okay, your assessment did not raise the taxes. Okay, this is what I stated earlier in 2018. Okay, your assessment's at $100,000, total taxes are $1,000. Your 2022, your tax rate's $13 a thousand, your total taxes is $1,300. Your assessment stayed the same, but your taxes went up. Why did it go up? Because the tax levy went up. Okay, remember, town governments, the tax cap is the friend of the consumer, of the property owner. The tax levy cannot increase within certain parameters more than 2%. You should be embracing that. You want to cut taxes, but as I said, you want to cut spending, but the government still have to provide those services. So if you want to cut spending, if you go to your legislatures and your town boards and your school boards and you say you got to cut your spending, you should come prepared to answer the question, how do you propose to cut spending? What do you want us to cut? Do you want us to cut our police services? Do you want us to cut other various important services that the town provides? It's easy to sit back and say, I just want to cut, okay? But you really got, it's the service, it's quality of service that you're going to be providing. So another myth is that assessors give raised values in response to the taxing pressure for revenue. The town needs more money. That is not correct. That's simply not true. Values change in response to the economic changes in the marketplace. Tax rates should drop proportionally to assessment increases. If they don't, you're going to have additional taxes being collected. Okay, the assessor sets the property taxes. Is that a fact or a myth? Well, hopefully by now you know that that's a myth. The fact is they're set by school boards, town boards, village boards, and county legislatures. They're not set by the assessors. The assessor is only responsible for placing a fair market value on your property. Okay, there are a couple dates here that we're going to get into as we wind down here. Taxable status date, March 1st. That's a very important date, okay, for exemptions and what the condition of your property is on that year. Taxable status date. So we're going to value your property on what's, and this is where it really gets complicated. If I haven't confused you enough yet, now I'm going to really confuse you. Your property is going to be valued what's there on March 1st, 2022, but we're going to be valuing it as of July 1st of 2021. Okay, so it's what there on March 1st. So if you are thinking of taking down that old garage, okay, if you are thinking of, let's hypothetically just say, I know it's early, you can't do it in Western New York on this date, but let's say hypothetically you're looking to put an in-ground pool in your property in February, which I know you can't do. You should hold off on those improvements, doing what you want to do there, if you're going to be adding value to your property till after March 1st. So the pool, because it's going to be valued as of March 1st. If that pool won't be there on March 1st, you'll get a year, basically get a year of tax-free on the pool. Conversely, on the demolition of the garage, if you're thinking about demolishing a garage, you should take it down before March 1st. So it's not there on March 1st, because if it's there on March 2nd, it's going to be valued. Okay. So you see a lot of developers take down properties that they may own. They do demo, you see them doing it in February. And it's mainly because they don't want to pay tax on it for the upcoming year. If all your exemptions are due on March 1st, by March 1st, your senior citizens, your star, every exemption, you gotta get those filed by March 1st. Again, the tentative roll is filed May 1st. Grievance day is the fourth Tuesday, which is May 24th next year. That's when they start. And the final roll is filed on July 1st. So I want to thank you for your time, your patience, your understanding as I went through the slide presentation. There's my name, Joe Eminger, my partner, John Zukowski. You can also reach out to us. Here's the phone number that you can call. You can call that number starting tonight or tomorrow. Okay, you can call that number. You'll probably get, if somebody is there, they'll take the call live. If not, it will go to a voicemail and somebody will return your call. If you'd rather email, that's the email, irondecoy@enpm100.com. We will get back to you with with any questions you have on that. Again, you can call us or email us starting after this meeting tonight, up to and including through April of next year. So at this point, we'll get into our question and answer section of the report. I will turn it back over to Amy, and I'll let her run it from here on in. Amy, it's all yours.
Thanks, Joe. So we had a lot of good questions that came through during the presentation. Some of them came through ahead of the presentation, so I just wanted to get to a couple of those. Who determines when a reassessment should be done?
Can you repeat that, Amy?
Who determines when a reassessment should be done?
Okay, who determines that? That authority ultimately lies with the town board. Okay, the town board makes all those decisions whether or not a reassessment project should move forward. So they get together. They'll meet with the assessor and they'll go through. It's not made haphazardly. The decision is made over a period of months and looking at everything. They'll look at equalization rates and they'll determine what should be done. So ultimately, the town board makes that decision.
Okay. How many years can elapse before one is done?
Well, generally speaking, the state of New York recommends that one be done every 3 to 5 years. Looking at those figures. So generally, towns look at them every 4 or 5 years. So, they'll look at them to get them done. And but it can vary. Some will go a shorter time frame. It all depends on what the equalization rate is doing. If the equalization is dropping fairly quick, you may see a town do it in 3 years. If it's taking if it's not dropping as quick, they may go longer.
Okay, this was a popular question. How is the town going to balance what people paid only due to real estate housing shortage, not because of a greater value of actual homes? I know of numerous buyers who paid $40,000 to $50,000 over list price, and list price was already over appraisal price.
Yeah, that's a for lack of a better term, I'll say that's a popular question that we have gotten over the last 2 years in every town that we have done. The market is going crazy. Okay, property values are going places where no one thought that where they would go to. So how are we addressing that situation? Well, the sales that we are using in our modeling have all sold within a 2 to 3 year window. So that's the market. The assessor, as I explained in the presentation, the assessor has to assess properties ad valorem, at market value. What we do to offset that is that we do not use the sale price per se as the sole determinant in market value. We will have 4 or 5 sales on each home in Irondequoit. And if your property sold within those 2 to 3 years, one of the sales, if it's an market level arm's length sale, one of the sales in our model will be your sale. But there will also be 3 or 4 other sales in that model that may lower the value. So what we've seen in other municipalities that we've done is that the value of the homes are generally for these homes that went $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 over selling price, that they generally do not come up to that $40,000 or $50,000 increase. That they are lower because you're using other sales along with them.
Very good. Is there a percentage cap in place for an increased assessment?
Is there a what cap?
Is there a percentage cap in place for an increase on the assessments?
Well, I think no. I mean, the property values can go up 40, 50, 60%. I mean, that's an exaggeration. Okay, likely. But the only thing that there's a cap on is the tax cap. Okay, that applies to the tax levy only. Assessments, there's no cap. It can go down and it can go up. Whatever the market determines, that's what it can be.
Okay. Can we obtain an independent assessment and bring it to the town?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, an independent appraisal, and she used the term assessment and appraisal interchangeably there, and that's a common that happens occurrence. They think I'm an assessor, and I'm not an assessor. I'm an appraiser. Okay, and I have to. You can bring an appraisal. I alluded to that in the presentation. You can hire I would recommend to hire a licensed appraiser in New York State who has a license, and you can present that. I would hold off on that until you get your notice in March. Don't go out and hire an appraiser now. I mean, all the Rochester residential appraisers are probably mad at me for saying that, but don't hire a residential appraiser now. Wait till March. Don't jump off the bridge yet, folks. Okay, wait to see what your assessment's going to be come March, and then you can ask yourself the question: is that figure that Joe and Amy put on the property, my property, is it reasonable? If you don't think it's reasonable, then you should hire. I would consider hiring an appraiser. You don't have to hire an appraisal when you come in to do your informal review with my firm. You can also use that same appraisal to go to the Board of Assessment Review. And you can also use that same appraisal to go to the SCAR if you're not happy. So you can get a lot of bang for your buck out of that one appraisal. But if you want to get an appraisal, you're welcome to bring that appraisal to any one of the 3 avenues that you have to challenge your assessment.
Okay. If you defended your reassessment in 2018, do you have to do it again?
Well, yes, because the 2018 figure is going to be different in all likelihood than the 2022 figure. So the 2018 figure, I had no control over. Amy, the assessor, didn't have any control over that. That's done prior. I can only help you with the 2022 value. I know for a fact that I'm going to get people calling me up and they're going to say, Joe, my assessment went up 50% from last year. And I say, well, technically your assessment went up 50% from 2018. But I said, I can't help you with what your assessment was in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. The only thing that I may be able to help you with is what your assessment is in 2022. And we'll have a discussion about that. So don't pay attention to what's happened in the past. Pay attention to what is going to be happening in the future with your assessment and concentrate on that.
Okay. Are there any other municipalities currently doing reassessments? I happen to know of one other town in Monroe County that is conducting a reassessment project this year. That's the town of Penfield. I'm not sure if there are any others in Monroe County. Do you know of any in Western New York that are this year?
Well, Henrietta is doing one as well.
Okay.
Okay, they're doing one. So, and there are other municipalities going. I mean, we're not the only reassessment contractor. You know, I'd like to say we were, but you know, there are other firms out there, you know, doing the same thing that we do. So other towns are most definitely looking to do one in 2022, and we've actually been hired by 4 towns already to do 2023 assessments in Western New York.
Okay. I thought this was a good question. When values go down, can the equalization rate go over 100%?
That's a great question. You're right, Amy. It doesn't happen often, but yes, absolutely. The equalization rate can go up over 100%. I haven't seen it recently, but I have seen it over the last 20, 30 years where periodically you'll see an assessment, an equalization rate go a little bit over 100%. I think the highest one that I ever saw was upwards of 104, 105%, but that's very rare. But it can happen.
Okay. So what happens if the market crashes?
Well, from whose standpoint, I guess I would ask that question.
So
From your standpoint, from the homeowner standpoint, if the real property market crashes, okay, I'm assuming that again, what are you going to do when the market crashes? You're going to pay attention to what the tax levy is doing. Okay, that's the first thing, because the assessor, as I alluded to earlier, the assessor could lower everybody's assessment 50%, and your taxes are going to be the same to the penny. But I would imagine at that point that the town board members' phones are probably going to start ringing. The assessor's office phones are probably going to start ringing, and they're going to say, when are you going to do another reassessment project? Because you got to reflect these, the declining market. So that's what will happen, I would imagine, if that occurs.
Will businesses be reassessed?
Well, businesses, no. Commercial property will be reassessed. We don't value businesses. We value commercial property, industrial property. So yes, every property in Irondequoit is going to have a new assessment, vacant land. They'll have a new assessment on the 2022 roll.
Okay. Where can people go to see their neighbor's assessment?
Well, these are great questions. You're making my job easy, because these are great questions. That will be online. There will be what we refer to one-liners. There'll be a PDF document that you'll be able to check by street what your neighbors' homes are assessed at. So you will have the opportunity to see what your neighbors' homes are assessed at. They will not have the names, so they'll be, but the addresses will be up there, as will your own. Every property, residential property, will be there. I caution people on that note, when you come in and challenge your assessment, I caution you not to compare assessments in your neighborhood. And the reason for that is, who's to say your assessment's right and theirs is wrong, or theirs is right, or you're wrong? If you're going to do comparative assessments, you probably should look at minimum and of 1,000 properties, because you just can't look at 3, 4, 5 comparable assessments. That's why sales are the best indicator of value. You can use assessments. I'm not saying you can't, but it's a much more difficult thing to sway a hearing officer or a board of assessment review if you come in with assessments. You want to come in with sales.
Okay. What is an arm's length transaction?
Okay, an arm's length transaction is a transaction between, it's kind of related to the market value definition. Okay, you got to have a sale of not under duress. It's got to be not related, unrelated parties. It's just a general sale. It's not a bankruptcy sale. It's a transaction that has occurred, exposure on the open market. It's a transaction that has occurred in the marketplace between a willing buyer, willing seller at market value, and not every sale. There are a lot of sales that are not arm's length transactions. We use the firm Valid Sales in the assessment industry. Each sale, we only use valid sales to compare properties to. We don't use foreclosure sales. We may or may not use estate sales. So the state will say don't use any estate sales because they say they're not market. I respectfully disagree with the state on that. I think there are some estate sales that are market level. They go on the market. They're listed through MLS. So they got to be exposed for a reasonable period of time in the open market. And those are arm's length sales, generally speaking.
Okay, I think that's all we have, Joe. If people have questions that they did not get answered, the telephone number is on the screen. It's 585-532-5090. You can also call the assessor's office at 585-336-6055. And that concludes the presentation for tonight. And I'd like to thank Joe. That's it.
Thank you, everyone. Don't hesitate to call or email us.
Thank you.